Hi everybody, this is Noelle for Petitti Garden Centers, and we're here in Oakwood Village, and it's spring, and that's wonderful, and there's lots to be done at this time of year, but I thought I would offer some spring container garden ideas for you and options so you can mix and match and, fill your container gardens out on the front porch or what have you with some really pretty spring color. So like any container gardening, you're going to start with your pot. We'd really like it if your pot had drainage holes in the bottom. If it doesn't, you can always put about an inch or two of gravel or pebbles or styrofoam peanuts or what have you as filler and drainage material down at the bottom. The other thing that I do with some of our deeper containers is I take the plant pots and I actually take them off the plants. So I put them upside down and I put them down at the base of the container, also to fill up some of that airspace, if you will, that space that you would normally be pouring soil into. You don't have to worry about it. So those containers take up that space and still provide drainage for you. So that's really nice, lightweight filler down at the bottom as well. Then you're going to use potting soil. On larger containers, you can use a planting mix as well. So Petitti planting mix works nicely. However, just keep in mind, it does stay moister longer. So if you are an overwaterer, I'd probably stick to the potting soil just because it drains a little bit quicker and really ensures that these plants will not have any root rot problems, anything like that. The other thing that I did is I did add Osmocote to this container. Osmocote asks that you kind of scrape it into the upper level of the soil. So I added about 5 tablespoons of Osmocote to this container. This container is about 14 inches wide, okay? So the soil's ready to go, the fertilizer's there, drainage material in the bottom, no problem whatsoever. And now you get to pick your spring plants. So at this time of year, there are trees and shrubs that are out on the nursery floor, and they're not showing a lot of color just yet, so they're just kind of bare sticks and what have you. But the perennial area, there's a lot of color, and those plant materials have been grown in cold greenhouses, so they're basically ready to go as far as going outside, and you can make colorful combinations, that was hard to say, out of these plant materials. And then later on, when maybe they're not blooming as well, or that they look a little peaked because it does get warmer in the season and they tend to kind of die back a little bit, you can plant them out in your garden. So there's plenty to see out there. We have everything from our thriller plant that we're going to use today. So our thriller, our focal point, this is a Lenten Rose called Merlin, and Merlin's got this beautiful sort of burgundy and rose coloring to it. You can tell a lot of root systems. It's very established in that pot. So just make sure that you're always scoring the roots before you plant them in the ground or in a container garden. So I'm going to place Merlin in that thriller spot. I always suggest just picking one thriller that's going to be your upright focus, if you will. The other thing with container gardening that I like to mention is that give yourself some watering space. Give yourself about an inch or so from the top lip of the container. So when you do water, the water is going into the container. It's not rolling over the sides of the container and pulling some of the soil with it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick my spiller, which is right in front of me. This is Lismachia, or sometimes it's called Creeping Jenny. It is a perennial ground cover, but we use it in a lot of different containers and landscapes. It's a great prostrate ground cover, but it will also spill over the sides of containers. So we like Creeping Jenny. It has a beautiful sort of chartreusey gold color. I'm just going to take one of the sections of this Creeping Jenny ground cover, and I'm going to kind of put it in the front and let that kind of tilt it, if you will, when you're planting, so the gravity will start pulling those stems right over the side. The next thing that you want to use are some fillers. I always like to use really pretty foliage plants, and I'm going to tell you this is one of my favorite tulips. When you use variegated leaves, you're obviously contrasting with the other foliage that's in the pot. With bulbs, spring bulbs, you can pop them out, and then you can divide them by each bulb, okay? So they'll come apart pretty easily. You can see a lot of roots here in that system. I'm going to take just a cluster on the side here, put the rest back in this pot. I can plant them in a container. I can plant them outside right now. I can actually bring them inside if I want to and enjoy them inside the home at this time of year as well. Just know the more heat that they receive, the faster they are going to bloom and bloom out. So what I normally recommend is that you keep your bulbs actually in a cool spot at night when you're not enjoying them. So if you can take them back out to the garage or take them, you can actually put them in the refrigerator too if you have a spot, and keep them nice and cool. Another plant that I love is the Forgetmenots. They come in white, they come in blue, they come in pink. This is a really neat kind of perennial plant, but they tend to reseed themselves as well. So once you get Forgetmenots and you let them go to seed, you pretty much have Forgetmenots for a long time. So again, separate that root system, get them installed as a filler around the tulips and the Lenten Rose. I kind of like them right in the middle, that frothy white flower, really, really nice. Okay. The other thing that I like are the violas at this time of year. So your violas are pansies. The violas are the smaller flower. The pansies are the larger flower. Lots of different colors and faces, if you will, and shapes and sizes. I feel like the violas have a really stronger fragrance versus the pansies, and I just love their little cheerful faces. So I'm going to kind of squeeze them up front here. I want to put the coral bell in, and I'm going to shift a little bit over to the side because the coral bell is a great perennial that we can use in sun or shade. I would say they're happiest in like the part shade condition, but you can stick them in both. And again, with this big root system, I'm going to have to break up the soil a little bit. And feel free to rearrange, as you're going through and container gardening, you can, of course, kind of rearrange foliage. So you've got some spring perennials. You have some wonderful spring annuals, of course. If it should snow, guess what? These guys have no problems whatsoever, so they can be covered by snow. If it is a really, really cold evening and we go into freezing temperatures, it's not a bad idea to kind of pull them under cover, bring them in the garage, bring them under a porch overhang, and they will do fine. You might have to clip off a few flowers here and there or maybe some foliage, but other than that, they will look great, okay? So spring container for your front, and enjoy.